There's so much that we don't know about Yoda's species, but that's what makes them so compelling. Famously, George Lucas intentionally kept them enigmatic, so they don't even have a confirmed name or homeworld. However, one thing is certain. Each member that we see on screen in canon and in Legends is individually powerful in the Force. Throughout this video, we'll be looking at confirmed facts as well as some fascinating fan theories and speculation to examine why their species is as strong as it is. One thing we know from Legends and canon is that this species appears to have exceptional Force sensitivity. There are only 3 confirmed individuals in canon, and all of them underwent Jedi training. Yoda was one of the most powerful Jedi in galactic history and was Grand Master of the entire Order. Yaddle is the only known female member of the species so far, and was a distinguished Jedi Master in her own right. Grogu was also strong in the Force, even if he ultimately decided to forego Jedi training in favor of joining the Mandalorians. Meanwhile, in Knights of the Old Republic, we meet a final member of Yoda's mysterious species. Vandar is a leading member of the Jedi Council who plays a crucial role in leading Revan back to the light. This consistency strongly implies that they have a natural biological predisposition to extreme Force sensitivity. I'm assuming that they've got a lot of midichlorians between them. Grogu is perhaps the most interesting example because he's the only infant member of the species that we've encountered. Firstly, we see in the Mandalorian that he's powerful enough to suppress his Force abilities. That takes unbelievable control and is something that most Jedi younglings wouldn't be able to do. This potentially saved his life because it allowed him to remain unnoticed by the Inquisitorius. We still haven't had a dark side member of the species. I don't even know if that's possible, but it's frightening to think about given Yoda's power. Grogu gave an early demonstration of his power on Arvala 7 after a Mudhorn beast attacked Din Djarin. He used the Force to lift the creature into the air so that Djarin had enough time to kill it. Then Grogu fainted from Force exhaustion because it was such an extreme use of power for one so young in their physical development. Grogu also performs Force healing, an advanced skill that usually requires arcane study and deep knowledge. Yet he demonstrated an inherent ability to use this skill without any instruction. Grogu also shows that he can sense intent and emotional states with a rare precision that most children simply aren't capable of. Oh, and to chime in real quick, we're offering the Grandmaster Sabers in the Stickman Saber store right now at 20% off. Use the coupon Grandmaster to redeem this offer, and also get 2 sabers for free if you get a Collector Series blade. Yaddle is another fascinating member of the species, both because she's female and because she's a contemporary of Yoda's. We know from the Star Wars Character Encyclopedia that she was 479 at the time of the Trade Federation's invasion of Naboo. This makes her substantially younger, but still an extremely experienced Jedi compared to most of the Order. Yaddle is a member of the Jedi Council in The Phantom Menace, which reflects her wisdom and strength in the Force. She has many adventures throughout the High Republic era, but arguably her most defining moment was her tragic appearance in Tales of the Jedi. She fought the fallen Jedi Count Dooku in an epic duel that ended with her demise. However, while she ultimately dies, it's not because she's weaker in the strictest sense. At the climax of the battle, Dooku unleashes a barrage of dark-side energy, and Yaddle reacts by holding it in place, which is an insane feat of control. She attempts to contain and redirect this raw destructive Force output, while also trying to reach him emotionally and return him to the light. Dooku is one of the most powerful Force users of his era, but he struggled to overwhelm her in lightsaber combat. Eventually, she overexerts herself using the Force to prevent the industrial door from crushing her. This leaves her defenseless without her saber, and finally, Dooku can cut her down. Another of Yaddle's most powerful abilities was her mastery of Morikro. The secret Jedi art was also known as the Touch of Death. It allowed its users to slow an opponent's bodily functions to the point of death. According to the Star Wars Encyclopedia, Yaddle was one of the few members of the Order permitted to practice this deadly technique because it was so dangerous and could lead to dark side temptations. Yoda's duels with Count Dooku and Darth Sidious are also examples of his species' Force sensitivity in action. Star Wars Timelines reveals that he was born in 896 BBY, so he was one of the oldest living beings in the Republic. Usually, we see him shuffling slowly with the support of his stick or floating in a hover chair. Despite this, he was more than capable of going head-to-head with Dooku in Attack of the Clones. The Revenge of the Sith novelization describes this ability as Force Valor, but explains that it was only sustainable for short periods before it exhausted him. Yoda's Force powers gave him the energy to almost defeat the former Jedi Master. One of my favorite quips from the Revenge of the Sith novelization is when Count Dooku says that he doesn't foresee any problems against Anakin or Obi-Wan unless one of them has Yoda in their pockets. Remember, Yoda favored Form 4 Ataru, which was one of the most physically demanding lightsaber styles because of its intense acrobatics, including somersaults and leaping strikes. Yoda almost defeated Dooku before the Sith Lord retreated in his Solar Sailor. Meanwhile, he displayed his powers when he fought Sidious in the Senate chambers in Episode 3. This was a relatively even fight that Yoda essentially loses because his spirit is broken. The Revenge of the Sith novelization gives an incredible insight into this. Matthew Stover wrote, "Finally, he saw the truth. This truth that he, the Avatar of Light, Supreme Master of the Jedi Order, the fiercest, most implacable, most devastatingly powerful foe the darkness had ever known, just didn't have it." Even later, when he's a shadow of his past self, Yoda displays his power while training Luke Skywalker, almost effortlessly lifting his student's X-Wing from his swamp on Dagobah. We don't get many examples of Vandar Tok'er using the Force in Knights of the Old Republic, however he does demonstrate a strong precognitive ability that is very Yoda-like in its presentation. He senses the growing threat of the Sith before it manifests, but remains clear-headed, unlike many Jedi of the era. He's also on the High Council, which obviously implies that he's a Jedi of great wisdom and probably Force ability. Vandar also supports retraining Revan in the ways of the Jedi, even though some council members are strongly against giving the former Sith Lord another chance. Revan is responsible for millions of deaths at this point, so that's not unreasonable. But Vandar sees the bigger picture because his attunement to the Force provides him with deep clarity. In the game, we frequently see him in meditative states, which suggest a high level of attunement to the Force. Of course, this doesn't save him in the end, because he's one of many Jedi who lost their lives at the Conclave at Qatar when Darth Nihilus consumed all life on the surface of the Miralucan colony. I've already alluded to this, but one potential reason behind Yoda's species being so powerful is their longevity. This is a slightly more polarizing topic than you might expect because we know so little about them. The Essential Guide to Alien Species is now a legend source, but it says that although their lifespan is unknown, records indicate that they are extraordinarily long-lived. There's no source information for Vandar Tok'er's age in either the Knights of the Old Republic games, but he appears to be in his later years. However, as I've confirmed earlier, Yoda is almost 900 years old when he dies on Dagobah in Episode 6, while Yaddle was close to 500 before her duel with Count Dooku. We also know from the Mandalorian TV show that they're late developers. Din Djarin was shocked to discover that his 50-year-old target was actually still an infant. However, this isn't unique to Yoda's species because there are other long-living species in the galaxy. The Hutts are perhaps the most influential example because the Essential Guide says that they can live up to over 1,000 years old. Also, the Clone Wars visual guide says that most Huttlets spend the first half-century of their life in their parents' brood pouch. Rada is a notable exception because Jabba wanted him to experience the galaxy. The big question regarding Yoda's species is whether their extreme longevity gives them more power or if their potent Force sensitivity increases their longevity. This is a subtle but important difference, but the reality is that we simply don't know. I'm not going to pretend that I have more information than anyone else, so all I can do is speculate. Longevity and Force powers don't necessarily go hand in hand. The long-lived Hutts show practically no signs of Force sensitivity in canon or legends. There's only a single example of a Hutt Jedi, and he remains extremely polarizing, with some fans debating whether he should be considered part of the Legends continuity. I'm talking about the notorious Beldorion the Magnificent, who was the main antagonist in Barbara Hambly's novel Planet of Twilight. Nonetheless, the big difference is that the Hutts are far more numerous than Yoda's species, which has just 3 confirmed members in canon. Nonetheless, it is notable that Yoda's decline happens very quickly in relation to his total lifespan. It's possible that the harsh conditions on Dagobah took their toll, or that he simply accepted that he could serve the galaxy better as a Force ghost than as a living being. This remains open to debate, so feel free to tell me what you think in the comments below. Nonetheless, there are definitely some tangible ways that their longevity must have boosted their power. They lived for centuries, so this naturally gave them more time to study Jedi lore, to train, and to refine their skills. Basically, they're able to accumulate a level of wisdom that most Jedi can never reach. Star Wars Jedi Survivor reveals that Yaddle even wrote her theses and was one of the most respected scholars of her era. All three of Yoda, Yaddle, and Vandar were experienced teachers who trained hundreds of Jedi between them over the centuries. Yoda mentored many future masters and Jedi Council members, including Mace Windu, Count Dooku, and Sindralig. Oppo Rancisis was one of Yaddle's Padawans and even made the Jedi Council before she did, although they'd eventually serve on it alongside each other, as we see in Episode 1. Meanwhile, Vandar was one of the wisest Jedi of his era. He was a leading instructor on the Jedi Enclave on Dantooine, and the one who decided that Revan was fully redeemed. Their centuries of wisdom and experience made them some of the most potent Force users in the Star Wars galaxy. Don't underestimate the importance of that life experience. Each member of Yoda's species was witness to many dramatic galactic events that profoundly influenced their decision-making. Vandar fought alongside Republic troops during the Kai Kaylee Reconquista in 4225 BBY as they liberated the planet from criminal gangs. Over the following centuries, before the Mandalorian Wars, he lived through many crises and tumultuous events. These included the notorious Padawan Massacre on Taris, one of the most traumatic events in the history of the Jedi Order. The Knights of the Old Republic comic book series reveals that this incident saw 5 Jedi Masters murder 4 of their Padawans during a knighting ceremony because they believed one was fated to destroy the entire Jedi Order. Similarly, Yaddle played a crucial role in the Jedi intervention against the path of the Open Hand cult and the tragic events of the Night of Sorrow on Dalna in 382 BBY. The High Republic series documents this dark tale that saw both Yoda and Yaddle heavily involved. Meanwhile, the Star Wars databank says that Yoda attained the rank of Jedi Master when he was 100, which is insane given that he lived for another 8 centuries. According to Star Wars, Everything You Need to Know, he trained over 20,000 Jedi in his lifetime. He also studied under several, from the High Salarian Master Nkata Del Gormo, one of his first rumored instructors, to the Force Ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn. Yoda also lived through many Supreme Chancellors, including Lina Soh during the Great Hyperspace Disaster, Keong Grey Lark and the High Republic, Finis Valorum and the Decline of the Republic, and of course, Emperor Palpatine. Each of these major events and epochs in galactic history would have had a potent impact on his worldview and how he used his powers. The third factor I want to discuss is the emotional temperament of Yoda's species and how this boosts their power. Yoda and Yaddle consistently show a deep calm in their appearances throughout the franchise. We know that fear, anger, and chaos cloud the Force, yet they never succumb to these negative emotions or traits despite the adversity they face throughout their lives. This consistent focus sharpens their awareness of the Force and heightens their sensitivity. There's a good chance that this is why Yoda is alert to events and moments that others are not. For example, in Attack of the Clones, Yoda feels a profound disturbance in the Force when Anakin slaughters the Tusken Raiders on Tatooine. He says, "Pain, suffering, death, I feel. Something terrible has happened. Young Skywalker is in pain. Terrible pain." Yoda and Mace Windu are unable to confirm the source of Anakin's agony, but the wise old Jedi feels the dark side energy emanating from the teenage Padawan. Ultimately, they wrongly misattribute it solely to the death of Anakin's mother Shmi, rather than the destruction of the Tusken tribe. Later in Episode 3, Yoda is fully aware of who wiped out the younglings in the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. It's possible that Obi-Wan knew, but his love for his former apprentice blinded him to reality. That's why he had to see the truth with his own eyes in one of the movie's most tragic moments as he saw the monster that Anakin had become. It's not all doom and gloom, though. Yoda demonstrated his calm emotional temperament in Episode 2 when he was teaching the younglings. Obi-Wan presents the puzzle of the missing planet Kamino, which Yoda solves by listening to the youngsters. This shows the old Jedi's true nature because despite almost a millennium of experience, he still respects the thoughts of children. Later, he has the humility to submit himself to the teachings of Qui-Gon Jinn, despite the deceased Jedi being one of his own former students. The Clone Wars series shows that Qui-Gon had begun to uncover the secrets to manifesting his consciousness after death. This journey took him to an unknown world where he learned from 5 Force priestesses who taught him that when a living thing dies, it passes through the living Force and into the Comic Force, where it becomes one with the Force. Long after his death, Qui-Gon sent Yoda to Dagobah, where he experienced the first stage of his trials. Later, he guided Yoda to this mysterious planet, where he met the Force priestesses. Ultimately, Yoda chose to go into exile on Dagobah, where he waited for Luke Skywalker to come to him. We think of Yoda as the perfect embodiment of what it means to be a Jedi and completely without attachment. In the Revenge of the Sith novelization, he explicitly tells Obi-Wan that he would sacrifice him without any hesitation if it served the greater good. This is one of the most extraordinary examples of the rigidity of the Jedi Code and the discipline it requires. However, Yoda could be surprisingly sentimental, as we see in the canon short story There Is Another, in the 2023 anthology A Certain Point of View. If you haven't read this, I really recommend getting your hands on it because it provides some fascinating context for many iconic Star Wars characters. Anyway, it confirms that Yoda had somehow kept Qui-Gon Jinn's cloak in his possession on Dagobah, as well as one of Obi-Wan's pots. When a probe droid discovers his presence, Yoda destroys it by tossing the pot through its bulbous eye, causing it to self-destruct and explode, although this destroys the pot as well. Eventually, another couple of probe droids confront him, and Yoda goes to great lengths to protect Qui-Gon's cloak, which he uses as a blanket. The story also reveals that he was extremely lonely in his isolation on the swampy planet. Obi-Wan's Force Ghost gently teases Yoda for his sentimentality when he appears to tell him that it is time for the old Jedi to train a new apprentice. One fascinating detail is that Yoda initially preferred to teach Leia because he believed her temperament was better suited to becoming a Jedi than Luke, who was too like his father. The Essential Guide to Alien Species says that Yoda's species was well known for its members' wisdom, deliberation, and compassion, as well as their mirthful sense of humor. However, they were also known for their strange tastes in food, often consuming meals that others could not even bear to smell. We see this when Yoda behaves like a crazy old hermit when Luke first arrives on Dagobah, although this is with the deliberate intention of testing the young man's patience. Perhaps a better example is Grogu in The Mandalorian, because he consistently demonstrates loyalty and affection. He's less emotionally detached than Yoda, Yaddle, or Vandar because he's still a child. This leaves him more prone to the fear of loss. We see his strongest Force moments occur when he feels protectiveness or terror. Usually this manifests in positive ways like protecting others from harm or healing Grief Karga. However, he also attempted to Force choke Cara Dune when he misread a threat. It's also worth remembering that despite his tender stage of development, he still carries the trauma of being an Order 66 survivor, as well as the loss of many Guardians who died protecting him. Meanwhile, Star Wars Jedi Survivor reveals that Yaddle was well known for her wisdom and quiet, calm composure. Despite this, Eno Cordero says that she had a strange sense of humor that clearly corresponds with other members of her species. One of the most notable aspects of Yoda's species is its diminutive stature. Each of the individuals we see on screen is very short, but as Yoda was fond of saying, size matters not. I already mentioned how he used the Force to lift Luke's X-Wing out of the swamp on Dagobah, but this was only a moderate achievement compared to some of his more astonishing feats. His control of telekinesis was one of his most remarkable talents. In issue 26 of the 2015 Star Wars comic book series, he rescued a child by holding two pirates aloft. Meanwhile, when he dueled Asajj Ventress in the Clone Wars series, he easily overpowered her. Yoda blocked her lightsaber strike using the Force before disarming her with a simple gesture, all the time acting as if he were her mentor. Another time during the Clone Wars, he created a Force barrier to protect himself from poisonous gas. In one memorable episode, he wiped out an entire droid squadron on Toydaria, including a pair of battle tanks almost single-handedly. Perhaps the most ludicrous depiction of Yoda's strength was in the original 2003 Clone Wars series, when Yoda uses telekinesis to destroy 4 droid troop transports. Of course, this isn't canon, and we shouldn't take it as a literal application of the Force. Nonetheless, it's totally epic and one of the most awesome moments in the entire show. I've already gone into detail about how Grogu used incredible telekinetic powers throughout The Mandalorian, despite being tiny and barely more than an infant. Of course, there are many other small species in the galaxy, but few of them are depicted in this way. Consider the Jawas, for example. With only a single Jedi amongst their ranks, despite there being literally thousands of them on Tatooine and other worlds across the galaxy, the Toydarians are another interesting example because they show strong Force resistance, although there's no recorded example of a member of their species being Force-sensitive in canon or legends. Yoda's species is disproportionately strong in the Force relative to their size. One of his most incredible abilities was his mastery of Two-to-Minis. This was the concept that Force users could draw potentially harmful heat or electrical powers into their bodies and diffuse it or channel it away. Yoda used this against Sidious in their duel in the Senate chambers. He was also actually besting the Sith Lord in conventional lightsaber combat at the start of their fight. It wasn't until Sidious started throwing everything at him that he became overwhelmed. The final reason why Yoda's species is so powerful is a meta one. We know so little about them except that they're strong in the Force. George Lucas was very deliberate in how he represented Yoda in the original trilogy, down to his unique language pattern. Lucas told the audience at the 2025 TCM Classic Film Festival he was basically the philosopher of the movie. I had to figure out a way to get people to actually listen, especially 12-year-olds. This was genius because it's become one of the most iconic aspects of the entire franchise. Yoda is also representative of a common archetype in fantasy and sci-fi, like Gandalf in Lord of the Rings or Professor X in X-Men. It was so successful that BioWare continued it by introducing Vandar, an even more ancient version of Yoda's unknown species. The deliberate mystery is what gives them their mystique. We have no sense of their home world or how they enter the wider galaxy. For example, where did the Jedi Order find Grogu, and how did he come to enter their protection? How rare is their species really? There are so many mysteries about them, and this is what makes them wonderful. Remember, this is a franchise that is obsessed with every micro detail, from Han Solo's first-class Corellian blood stripes to the Wookiee owner of the Mos Eisley Cantina who we never see on screen. We don't know if Yoda, Yaddle, and Grogu are representative of their species' natural Force abilities, or if they're just anomalies. The majority of their species may be just regular beings, like most humans, Twi'leks, or Duros. Then again, some beings do have a natural propensity to the Force, for example the ancient pureblood Sith or the eyeless humanoid Miralukans. Meanwhile, there are so many fan theories about Yoda's species and their background. Some believe that they appear at unique Force nexus points because Grogu was born in the same year as Anakin Skywalker, and Yoda appeared around the time of the supposed destruction of the Sith. However, most fans agree that this time the question is more interesting than the answer. I think I speak for all of us when I say that we should never know, and that it would be the worst decision to break this. Unless George Lucas wants to leave the answer in a time capsule somewhere. Otherwise, the mystery of this species and its extraordinary power should remain.